Hey guys, this is Kai, and welcome back to my 13.8 meta analysis. This is actually part 2, and if you missed part 1, feel free to go ahead and click right up here and go watch it after you watch part 2, because you don't have to watch part 1 to understand part 2. We just go over different comps in part 1, some very interesting lines with like the mascot Yasuo stuff, but if you want to go watch that after, which I highly recommend, go feel free to do that. But for part 2, just so you know what we are going over for today, in part 2, we're going to be going over Kai'Sa, Infiniteam, Anima Squad, Lulu reroll, and Ashe reroll. Now, as some of you may have guessed based off the thumbnail, Anima Squad, this is the big one. This is the meats and potatoes of this entire video, because the big reason why Anima Squad is so important to talk about is because it is a rule breaker. Every other comp we basically have talked about has been not so much of a rule-breaking comp. It's just like, oh, just you gotta do this small little thing and suddenly everything works out and it's perfect. Oh, you just gotta, make sure that whenever you are playing around mascots, you do the 3-2 roll down, the 4-1 roll down. It all makes sense. It all follows sort of the normal theory of TFT whenever it comes to approaching level 6 and level 7 reroll boards. Anima Squad breaks so many goddamn rules. It is like a delinquent inside of a prestigious private middle school. It's just smoking cigarettes outside in the courtyard, but he somehow aces all the tests. Who knows? Anima Squad, this is quite interesting. So again, we will talk more about this later, and it's again really cool. It's one of those comps that also just does way better in lower elo. And again, we'll explain all that later. I'm very excited to talk about Anima Squad, but as promised, we do need to go through all of the other comps as well. And let's just go right through them. So for the first one, as you may have already known, everybody knows about Kai'Sa. We all know about Kai'Sa, so, do I even really need to talk about it? Realistically, we all know that, yes, level 7, you play a flex unit here, and you just reroll for Kai'Sa at level 7, and elo 3 if you get lucky, rel 3 if you get lucky, go level 8, you play 6 6-star Guardian, bada bing bada boom, you're done. It's easy. The Kai'Sa itemization, again, Shiv, Gunblade, Ginsu's GS, this is for people who may not know, or maybe they're just starting to play TFT for the first time and now they're in set 8.5, and welcome. But you've been living under a rock, my boy. So Patrick Star looking ass. So here we go. We're gonna talk about all these items, and I guess the one little counterintuitive thing might be Shojin on Kai'Sa. Surprisingly does a lot better in the stats than Ginsu's does, so definitely something to keep in mind. Now, as we all know, Kai'Sa multi-shot, this is the best augment for this comp. It's not even close. But again, any misfortune augment, any rel augment, all are fantastic. Now, the thing I want to talk about though is because, again, we all know this. So let's talk about what to do if you're contested, because that is the part where people tend to struggle a lot. The first obvious, and I must say very obvious pivot, is the TF pivot, the Twisted Fate pivot. And the reason why this is obvious, and kind of why everybody kind of falls back into this if they're contested for Kai'Sa, is because of two reasons. The first one being that, hey, Echo and Alistar. Ooh, what is that? Oh, Echo, and when you're playing at level 7, Alistar. Ooh, they actually share some units here. And quite honestly, you can flex this frontline. If you hit a lot of Oxforce units, you can still play like an Oxforce frontline and Kai'Sa Misfortune in the backline. That's fine too. And the inverse is also true. You could also play that Nila, Garen, whatever frontline in front of here, and then play around Twisted Fate, Janna, Nico, whatever, right? You will get the duels because of Nila, so they're very interchangeable. And the second reason, by the way, is because, as you may have guessed, Twisted Fate shares a lot of the same items as Kai'Sa. Twisted Fate actually really likes Ginsu's better than all other items, and he sucks holding Shojin. If you build Shojin on Twisted Fate, you're trolling. So, don't build Shojin on Twisted Fate. But that Shojin can actually go onto Nico instead, and funny enough, Nico actually does share the exact same itemization as Misfortune. They're 1-for-1. They all share the exact same items. Guardbreaker, Gunblade, Archangels, Shojin, all fantastic. So feel free to slam those all onto Nico, and again, they're basically interchangeable. You can do whatever with both of these. Very, very great. And and again, like I said before, Ginsu's, funny enough, the Pikachu build is surprisingly really, really strong with TF. Which, if you don't know what it is Ginsu Shiv. And as you might have guessed, it's just a bunch of electricity. You just Pika the fuck out of your opponent, right? You don't expect to top 4 with this. Or sorry, don't expect to win out the lobby. Expect the top 4, because especially if you hit an early TF with double Shiv, that thing's going to do a crazy amount of damage. It's actually really good. But it's going to be a little hard to win out because Shiv does fall off in the late game. which is why even though the win percentage and the top 4 percentage is actually pretty decent with the Pikachu build, we scroll down a little bit into builds that might be more tailored towards the late game. Stuff like this one right here, the Shiv, Hodge, and Guardbreaker, or maybe even GS, Shiv, and Archangels. We can see that the win rate and the top 4 rates are actually slightly higher. Actually, the win rate's slightly lower. So, quite honestly, maybe Pikachu is just a wave. Funny enough. Anyways, moving on. What happens, though? 2 people are playing Kaisa. 2 people are playing TF. What do we do, right? That is the big one. What the hell do we do? What the hell is this? No, thank you. What the hell do we do if we are double contested for TF and Kaisa and we still have like infinite amount of bows? What the fuck do we do? And assuming you're the one who's really unlucky and not hitting your units, right? At that point, pray to God. But what you can do is actually play what's called the Triforce build. And the Triforce board, and this is, I don't think this one's talked about enough. The Triforce board is a last resort. This is a last resort board. And what I mean by that is that the stats are not terrific, but they're not bad. And what actually ends up happening is that because Kaisa gets Omega contested, Neela gets contested as well, but surprisingly enough, that means a lot of other 3 costs are available to you, specifically Vayne, specifically Riven. And what you can actually do is that you can actually play around this sort of board where it's just a bunch of 3 costs. Obviously, Triforce is the best augment in this scenario, but realistically, the core of this comp is actually these 3 units right here: Vayne, Kaisa, Misfortune, Neela. Everything else is a flex, but obviously you're going to want some frontline as well. Shen is the big one, because Shen 3 is actually incredibly tanky. It's really, really good. So Shen 3 is actually great. Riven as well, so you can get a little bit of that defender in there as well. Plus a Rammus. If you hit an Anima Spat, you can actually play Anima Kaisa. And surprisingly, oh, actually, sorry, that's a lie. I'm thinking of a different board. But the point is, this board is surprisingly strong. It's surprisingly strong, and it can actually top 4 you in a lot of situations that might seem really doomed. But just that you guys don't think I'm bullshitting here, a lot of the Vayne itemization actually follows the same sort of theory as Kaisa in sort of a way. She does like attack speed, but obviously you should think of Vayne as more of a caster rather than an auto attacker. So sure, Ginsu's is fine, but ideally you want, like, you know, Deathblade, IE. Shojin, surprisingly enough, also works very well on Vayne because she's a 40 mana cost unit, so she wants to cast often and she is a caster. So Shojin is one of her best items. And sure, if you have like Ginsu Shojin, it's kind of awkward because it's usually one or the other. But regardless, you can see how like the itemization could fall into more of a Vayne sort of thing if, you know, things aren't going your way. And still works out, and you can play around Vayne 3. And surprisingly enough, the stats on Vayne 3 plus a Shen on your board, 3.59, not even bad. If you look at Shen 2, it is a 3.71. But if you look at Shen 3, there is no data. Boom, Shen 3. Sorry, I had to go down into down to Diamond. But Diamond, yes, the average is 3.0 and still pretty good. You can still play around that sort of flex board. And again, it's not even bad. It genuinely is not even bad. So I highly recommend playing into this line in case you can find it. Obviously, because you're rerolling at 3, there is also a small possibility that you actually are the lucky one who hits the Kaisa 3. And if that's the case, you know, just play around the Shen frontline or whatever flex frontline that you have going on here. But if you have Kaisa 3, obviously itemize around it, and then just slowly tech out of this board and then into the 6-star Guardian board. And there you go. You'll have a great time. Now that we got those formalities out of the way, we're talking about Triforce, we talked about TF or whatever, let's talk about Trap Nima. Trap Nima, yes, the Anima traps, this composition, this fucking vertical trait that is full of traps. Now, why do I say that? First off, take a look at this board. This is sort of the board that everybody thinks about when they're thinking about playing around Anima. Some bastard outside is just blaring his horn outside. I don't know what the hell's going on. Welcome to Boston. Now, this is the board that everybody thinks about at level 7. It looks strong. Don't get me wrong, it looks strong. It looks strong, and the ideal scenario is if you have 2 stars across all the board, 3-star Riven, 3-star Vayne, 2-star Misfortune. We know. But surprisingly, this board sucks. It's really bad. Now, you might be wondering, well, why is it bad? Well, first off, you might be arguing like, hey, like the Jinx augment is pretty good. 4.08, 4.9, like it's so good. 4.09, like what the hell? Pause. As you go up the ladder, it actually becomes significantly worse. It becomes now 4.3, 4.34 into a 4.5, 4.6. That's the first moment, right? The second one that we should be talking about is actually how 5 anima, again, 4.43 in diamond, pretty fine. And if you're below this, it's actually even higher. But the problem is that as you go up the ladder, it becomes increasingly and increasingly worse. From going from a 4.4 in diamond plus, actually, we might even be able to go down to platinum, 4.35. You see how it goes it's even better the lower elo you are. But as you climb up the ranks, you're going to struggle more and more with this comp. And starting from Masters, you're not even looking at a 50% health 4 rate anymore with 5 anima. It gets even worse the higher you go. So this is the first thing that I wanted to talk about, which is anima crest. Now, with the anima crest, 5 anima is even worse. It's a 4.7. And this is sort of the first counterintuitive part of anima. Now, why is this part counterintuitive? Why is this counterintuitive? Well, the idea is simple. As you get better at the game, you start to understand that there's going to be a moment or a time in the game, in the late game, if you get far enough, that you want to start teching out of the vertical. You want to start teching out of a vertical trait in order to put more power onto your board using 2-star legendaries, right? And just to give you an example, let's just take a look over here. This is an 8 Spellslinger vertical board. Strong ass looking board. Strong ass looking board. This board is going to do numbers. It's going to do giga well, right? And don't get me wrong, this board's fantastic. It's a strong board. But again, we're fully committed into the vertical tree here. We're probably better off though if we just tech out of those, the Lux on our board, get rid of this, get rid of the LeBlanc, get rid of the Sona, get rid of the Twist of Fate, keep going down and start teching into legendaries. And then eventually we get to the point where our board just looks like this. Holy crap. Urgot 2, Garen 2, Mech Frontline, Mordekaiser 2, Fiddlesticks 2, Aurelion Sol 2, Janna 2, Syndra 2. This board will beat an 8 Spellslinger board every single time. Every single time. And the reason why is because even though we're not teched into fully, into a trait or into a vertical tree, we don't need to be. Because our units are so strong that they can compete not only against those vertical trees, but actually beat them. Now, the reason why this becomes counterintuitive is because the idea is that whenever you have an anima crest, the idea should be, hey, instead of playing Nasus and Sylas on my board, I can get rid of the Sylas. I can get rid of the Nasus, one of the two. And then I can just play a composition where I'm 5 anima, but now I also get to have a Garen and maybe even a Fiddlesticks on my board. So the idea is that you should have more liberty being able to place these units in, and 5 anima should sound better. At least for higher elo players, but this is actually not the case. As it turns out, you actually want to tech further into the vertical. Now again, if you're lower elo, this makes more sense. Oh, you just have more anima. You're instead of 5, you're playing 7. That makes so much more sense. It's so much better. But again, it's counterintuitive for a lot higher elo players in this way, because the idea of playing a Sylas 2 and a Nasus 2 on your board, who are, two shitters that really aren't providing much into a fight, the stats are actually a lot better just teching further into the vertical rather than trying to tech it out of it and try to play strong units like Garen 2, Echo 2, etc. That's the first most counterintuitive part about this mystery, if you will. The second one is this right here. Now, Anima 7 versus Anima 8. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm not talking about the vertical tree. I'm not talking about 8 out of 7 Anima. Okay, that's not what we're talking about here. We're not idiots. What I'm talking about is this. Anima squad, for the most part by the community, is viewed as a level 7 board. Myself included, I made this mistake a very long time. It wasn't until I researched 3 hours today into Anima and staring at stats and whatever, when I realized that Anima squad is not a level 7 board. Now, what exactly do I mean by level 7 board? A level 7 board is usually a board that you roll for on level 7 as soon as you hit level 7. So typically this means either on 3-5 if you were losing the entire early game, or on 4-1 if you were, kind of mixed streaking or whatever, or doing your own thing. 4-1 is typically the latest you will see most people hit level 7, unless they're, of course, playing reroll comps like reroll level 1s and level 2s. Now, here's the problem. Anima squad is not a level 7 board. And I say this because when you have a level 7 board, the idea is after your roll down, you will be stable throughout stage 4. You should be stable throughout stage 4. So just to give you a bit of an example, a good level 7 board would be something like the TF board, where the TF board, if we go back into the TF board, at level 7, what you can end up doing is that you can play a board that looks something along the lines of maybe TF, Nico, and just like 4 Ox Force. And surprisingly enough, where did my... Oh, Alistar. Oopsies. Here we go. You can play a board like this, and at level 7, this is very stable. This is very... Even with a TF1, ideally TF2, but with all these being 2-starred, even with a TF1 with the Ginsus will ramp up over time, and even like a Nico one. I mean, ideally one of these are 2-starred, but I mean, that's not always going to be the case. Even with this board, it's pretty stable at level 7. Surprisingly stable. And you'll get throughout stage 4, no worries. And level 8, by the time stage 4 is over, you can go to level 8 and tech into the TF board that we had previously here, and you're good to go. Anima Squad does not follow this. So, one, we've already established that Anima Squad 5 sucks, so you should play into Anima 7. But another thing is that your level 7 board will not be stable. Even if you roll down all your gold to 0, and you're able to find an Echo and a Misfortune, you will not be stable. Even if all of these are 2-starred, you're not going to be stable. And the reason why is this. Let's look into the stats. Obviously, we see 7 Anima here, 3.95 average, terrific. But let's split it by star level. Watch what happens. Misfortune 2, really strong. Echo 2, really strong. But now, Misfortune 1 is a 5.64. Echo 1 is a 4.79. What does this mean? Not only are the stats really bad if you only have an Echo 1 or Misfortune 1 on your board, which is pretty obvious, you're gonna bleed out, but it's so bad to the point where if this is not 2-starred by the beginning of stage 4, you're gonna bleed out. And you will actually lose all of stage 4. And you'll lose so much HP that you won't be able to recover. So how do we tackle this problem? Well, we need to change the way that we view Anima Squad, and instead of thinking about it as a level 7 board, we need to view it as a level 8 board. Now, there obviously is a very obvious exception to this, where if we play Spreadshot Vayne, if you hit Spreadshot Vayne, stay level 7. You reroll at 7, you try to hit your 3-star Riven, your 3-star Vayne or whatever, and as we can see, yeah, like 3-star Riven, 3-star Vayne, incredibly strong stats, 2.4, 2.34, again, really, really great. If you have Spreadshot, reroll at 7. But otherwise, you should not be doing this. And instead, what you should be doing is instead of playing for this level 7 board, you should be playing for this level 8 board, where you have Kaisa and Misfortune as the main primary carries. Now, what does this mean in terms of the way that we approach Anima? And how do we change the way that we approach it? Well, the way that I view it is this. With Anima Squad, you really need to think about how you are going to be approaching level 7 and what to do about it, right? And as I want to talk about it here, this is the level 6 board that you should be looking for. The way that I view it is this. One, you should have an Anima Spat. You should have it. You should know that it's on the way. Even if you don't have it now at 3-2, if you know that it's on the way somewhere, totally fine to play this line. Again, I'm going to assume in all these examples that the Anima Spat is there or will be there, because you should not be playing Anima with only 5 Anima. We know it's bad. So anyways, here's the way that I would approach it, and the way that I think Anima Squad should be played. You can lose mixed streak throughout stage 2. Maybe even loose streaking is better if you can try not to lose too much HP. But you'll probably mixed streak throughout all of stage 2. Especially because you'll probably be hitting, Nasus 2, Silas 2, maybe a Jinx 2 even. You should be hitting those if you're playing this line. But the idea is that you're probably mixed streaking around stage 2 because somebody's probably going to be playing underground, whatever. You get the idea. Stage 3-2 happens. You should roll down, but not to 0. Unlike if you remember in part 1 where we talked about mascots and how you should roll down on 3-2, basically almost down to 0 if it means you're going to hit your 2-star everything. Anima Squad is different. Anima Squad you should roll down, but I think you should really only roll down to like 30 gold. Nothing lower. 20 gold if you're like on 4 pairs, sure, fine. You're in like 25 spot, 22 gold, 23, whatever, fine. But you really should not try to break your economy here. And the reason why is because, again, like we talked about before, Anima Squad is a level 8 board, not a level 7 board. So what ends up happening is that throughout stage 3, you're going to be mixed streaking again. You're not going to be loose streaking, but mixed streaking. And the idea is that you basically will probably have your Silas 2, Nasus 2, your Jinx 2, hopefully a Vayne 2 or a Riven 2, but something along this board is what you're going to be aiming for. And the idea is that you don't want to be win. A lot of the time, you roll down on 3-2, you're trying to win streak. But Anima Squad, you're really, again, trying to mix streak. If you can win streak, terrific. But you don't want to bleed out all of stage 3. And you don't want to bleed out too heavily. throughout all of it. So mixed streaking is actually kind of the best solution here. It's not economically the most efficient, but in terms of the directionality of this board, again, this trade is a huge rule breaker. Smoking cigarette middle school rule breaker. Delinquent. But that is probably the correct way to actually approach this line. And what ends up happening is that on level 7, you end up playing without this Kai'Sa here. You're level 7. Don't roll down. Don't roll your gold. Instead, once you're level 7, sit a bit. You're probably going to be level 7 at 4-1 because you rolled a little bit on 3-2. Level 7 at 4-1. Sit. Relax. Chill. Don't roll down that much. The reason why is, again, it's a level 8 board. We want to be stuck on Echo 2 and Misfortune 2 for as little time as possible. So that means that on our 4-5 roll down at level 8, we're going to be trying to hit that Misfortune 2. Trying to hit that Echo 2. And trying to make sure that we don't fall into the trap of staying stuck on an Echo 1 and a Misfortune 1. Because like as we said before, in terms of the stats, we don't want to be stuck there. We don't want to be stuck in a position where the fuck is it? We're stuck with an Echo 1 or a Misfortune 1 on our board because as we can see, even if we have 7 Anima, if these are not upgraded, we're in for a really bad time. We're in for a really bad time. 43 percentile 4 rate. 27 percentile 4 rate if you only have a Misfortune 1. This comp is very reliant on you hitting that Misfortune 2. So don't rush level 8, but hit it at a time where your economy is strong enough that even though, yeah, you did mixed streak, basically stage 2, stage 3, and probably started losing, 4-1, 4-2, 4-3, 4-4, 4-4 is carousel, sorry, but 4-1, 4-2, 4-3. But from there, if you can manage to hit that Misfortune 2, guarantee the Echo 2, itemized it, and you've been itemizing for your units this entire time, you are in a much better and much significantly stronger spot to be winning out. 3.5 average, 3.21 average. So again, Anima squad, surprisingly enough, kind of relies on mixed streaking throughout the mid game and really managing your economy and understanding that, yeah, Anima squad is not a level 7 board. It is a level 8 board. Stop rolling on level 7 when you're playing Anima squad because you're not going to have a good time. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. You're going to lose HP throughout the early parts of stage 4. But by 4-5, you shouldn't be bleeding out anymore. And that is where the strength lies in this comp. And that is why this comp feels so counterintuitive sometimes. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the Anima augments as well in terms of like the best ones. Like we said before, this comp kind of relies on mixed streaking. And again, we're in the Stats Explorer, we're using 7 Anima here because the idea is that you're ending the game with both of these, meaning that you already knew that you're going to get the spat, yada, yada, yada. Trade Sector is one of the best augments that you can hit for Anima squad. And again, if you hit Trade Sector on 2-1, it's still good, but it means that maybe it was a spat opener. So you know you're going to hit the crest. Okay, fine, that's fine. But this is kind of a niche line. If we look into Trade Sector Plus, as we can see, it's a slightly worse, but it's still very good. Average of 4.05 is very, very good. And the idea, again, is basically you want to try to preserve your economy as much as you can without bleeding out too much throughout stage 2, 3, and 4. Specifically stage 3, that's the big one. So Trade Sector really helps alleviate that because it gives you money. But on top of that, that refresh every single round helps ensure that you're probably going to hit your 2-star upgrades anyways, unless you're really low rolling. But again, you should be really good to go here. Trade Sector is great, and actually Cluttered Mind is really, really great. Great as well. Obviously, again, like I said before, you really want to make sure that you have some way to hit that Anima spat. So hitting Cluttered Mind at 2-1, you shouldn't really be thinking about, hey, I'm going to play Anima squad this game, but rather, hey, Anima squad is an option for me later in the game in case I find a spat. But if it's not an option, that's okay. We'll play something else. But keeping Cluttered Mind in there, and if you hit the spat, go for Anima. Really, really good line. Finally, let's talk a little bit about Jinx reroll. Now, Jinx reroll, I personally don't like this line. I know a lot of people like this line and they're saying it's a good line. I don't like it mainly because of the reason that when you're rolling at level 6 for Jinx, one, you're stuck at level 5, or sorry, you're stuck at 5 Anima because you can't go 7 since you have 6 units on your board. That's one issue. The second issue is that Jinx reroll, it's sort of, you kind of want to hit it by like 4-1 or 4-2, and if you don't hit it by then, you're kind of in a bad spot. And then on top of that, your carry is Misfortune, who's your secondary in the late game. But then, you know, Misfortune is so contested, Echo is so contested, that if you don't hit these units at a certain point, it's going to get really difficult to play it out. And, you know, again, Echo's in Kai'Sa, it's in Oxforce TF, It's in freaking Vertical Star Guardian. It's in Spellslingers. They're very highly contested units, and it's really difficult to hit. Plus, as you can see here, if you only have a Misfortune 1 and you're playing Get Excited, you're hitting like a 4.95. It's not that good in my opinion. I think it's a bit risky. I think it's if you ever get a Jinx augment, everyone goes boom, and again, assuming that you have the anima spot on the way, it's a much safer and much more consistent line, even if the average says otherwise. It's because a lot of the Jinx reroll games are sort of, the stats are very heavily saturated by players who hit the Jinx 3 and then they found them MF2 and perfect, great. But when you don't hit it, it's a really feels bad. And the comp, sure, it averages just a bit higher, but it's a lot more inconsistent. So I would always recommend people to just play Everyone Goes Boom instead. If you happen to hit Jinx augments and you happen to have the anima line with Spat on the way, I think it's just much more consistent and much more of a better way to go. And again, as we said before, 5 anima with Get Excited, it's 49% top 4 rate. It's already not looking great. And we split it by star level. Again, you don't hit that Misfortune 2, you're looking at a really abysmal win rate. 5.5 average. It's terrible. It's a difficult, inconsistent line, but it exists if you want to play it. Now, finally, let's talk a bit about Infiniteam. We're gonna move on here. Infiniteam, it faces the same problems as Anima. It faces the same problem where 7 Infiniteam is just significantly way more playable than 5 Infiniteam. And the reality is that 7 Infiniteam is actually so much better that if you can't hit 7 Infiniteam because you just never found the spot, drop out of Infiniteam. Not completely. You can play into 3. You might be going, why would I play 3? 4.5 average and a 49% win rate. What the fuck? 45% top 4 rate. That's not very good. What the fuck are you talking about, Kai? Do you think 5 Infiniteam is any better? It's not. In fact, it's actually kind of worse. 49.3%, 49.8. It's actually a worse top 4 rate. And the average is 0.02 higher. 0.02. It's really not that much of a difference. So you're actually better off trying to tech into like legendaries or whatever with 3 Infiniteam. As we can see here. I mean, the deltas are always so high whenever you get to tech into Infiniteams. But you're always much better off trying to play around 3 Infiniteam rather than 5. And just trying to cap out that way. Otherwise, you're going to start bleeding out. I do want to mention another thing here too. Is that there is actually a video here. This is Rank 1 EOS shares 3 mistakes people make with Infiniteam. This was by Frobei. This was actually posted about 2 weeks ago. And the video still holds up. I highly recommend looking into here. They go a bit more in depth about what I'm going to share with you today with Infiniteam. But I will link this in the description below. So feel free to go look into it. But it's very important to look into this video because they do make a lot of good points. Now, I do want to make a clarification here. Infiniteam requires a bit of luck. Frobei and the Rank 1 EOS Challenger player, they both go into this a little bit into detail, but this board requires a bit of luck. Why do I say that? You would think that if I have 7 Infiniteam, boom, baya, we're gonna win out. The game is over. It's a GG, right? The average is really high for this board for a very particular reason. Actually, the same reason as the Jinx carry augment, where if you hit, you're going like turbo first. You're gonna go hit that MF2, that Echo 2, and the Jinx carry augment board. You're chilling. You're being chilling. You're cruising out. You're like, you're driving down the sunset. The music's blaring. You got a hot chick next to you who loves you and cares for you and loves and shares the same interests as you do. She plays TFT and she's just as good as you are, if not better, and you can learn from her and she's beautiful, right? But that's not what's going on here. It turns out that the stats are incredibly saturated by Infiniteam as well because of one singular upgraded unit. And as you might have guessed, it is Ultimate Ezreal. When we look into the stats here, even if you have 7 Infiniteam, if you have an Ezreal 1, you are averaging a 4.68. You're averaging a 4.68. But if you have an Ezreal 2, you are averaging a 2.6. Which is nuts. It is unbelievably nuts how much of a difference Ezreal 1 and Ezreal 2 makes. It's like, this is not even like a top 4 comp. Look, there's a 46% win rate if you find Ezreal 1. You need to hit the Ezreal 2 And not only do you need to hit the Ezreal 2, if you hit it, you're basically going first. You have like a 30% win rate. This comp requires some luck, some intense luck hitting the Ezreal 2. Now, people have actually found a bit of an interesting way to play around this win condition. And that interesting win condition is actually, if we scroll down a little bit here, is Sivir 3. Sivir 3. When you're playing Infiniteam, you should actually be holding on to every single Sivir you see. And surprisingly enough, if any of you had watched Mecha Cup in the final lobby, but this is the winner of Mecha Cup, and as you can see, he's actually holding on to every single Sivir, even if it grieves his econ. And the reason why is because the stats on Sivir 3 are so good that they can actually offset the problem of just trying to hit the Ezreal 2. By doing so, you're basically ensuring that, hey, even if I don't have Ezreal 2, if I got Sivir 2, I still got an incredible top 4 rate and a pretty strong win rate. Definitely something to look into when you're playing this line. Now, I have these open here as well because, again, with 5 Infiniteam, even though, yeah, that stats look good, again, we split it by star level here and we just scroll down a little bit as we should be able to see. Oh, sorry. That's not what I want to show you. Right here. Ezreal 1, 4.87, 43% top 4 rate. Ezreal 2, significant difference. Significant difference. Again, this line, you really should be, even if you have chronic hallucinations at the beginning, you should use this for tempo, but play out of Infiniteam unless you find this bad. It's a really, really strange line that feels like it's only contingent on Ultimate Ezreal, but it's actually contingent on hitting that Sivir 3 as well. But yeah, that's basically it. And just in case you didn't know what the board looks like, this is what the board looks like. Again, ideally, your win conditions are either Ultimate Ezreal 3, 2, 3, 2, or Sivir 3. One of these two are going to be your way out. And as you may already know, the Infiniteam Spat Holder, ideally it's Fiddlesticks or Mordekaiser. You just take off the Samira so that you have Ace in there. Some of the best, especially if you have Mordekaiser 2. Mordekaiser 2 is better than Fiddle 1, but Fiddle 1 is better than Mordekaiser 1. So there you go. Finally, let's talk a little bit about Lulu reroll and the 1-cost rerolls, because I said I was going to talk about this and then, we got through the meats and potatoes, but we should still talk about the desserts, right? Let's talk about Growth Spurt. Now, Lulu reroll is only viable with Growth Spurt. I have played the Pantheon version where you take the Pantheon carry augment. It's not very good. It's not great. And the reason why I say it's not that great is because this is just significantly better. Also, just the Pantheon augment, it just doesn't feel very good. Surprisingly enough, Pantheon feels like he does the same amount of damage with his carry augment and without his carry augment. So, quite honestly, just itemize your Pantheon 3, Lulu 3, and you're good to go. And, again, make sure you have Growth Spurt. This line's only viable with Growth Spurt. And you'll be surprised, this Pantheon 3 does a lot of fucking damage. A lot of fucking damage, and his hero augment almost makes no difference. So, again, you're playing this with supers. Very easy to roll on level 5 for because you're looking for Pantheon, GP, and Lulu. Once you hit these, you can go and just push level. It's really similar to Lulu reroll back in set 8 where you're rolling for Galio 3 and I believe it was Lulu 3. And then you just play vertically after that. The idea here is that you just eventually hit 6 hearts. And once you have 6 hearts, you are, like, incredibly chilling. This board is so fucking strong. Not much more needs to be said about this line, but it's just a line that I think not a lot of people are playing, but you should definitely look into it. Again, though, I really want to say this. Don't push levels if you only have Lulu 3. You need Pantheon 3. Without Pantheon 3, this comp actually falls apart pretty heavily because you just lack a front line. And this is really, really important because this will streak you all of stage 3, most of stage 4. And quite honestly, by the time it's stage 5, you should already be pushing levels and, you should be able to find some other units to help fortify the front line, even if it's just a little bit. Finally, lastly is Ashe reroll. Oopsies, these are the stats for Lulu reroll. But again, sorry, like I said before, 3 supers, 4 hearts. If you find the Zone Up 3, really, really great. I know the stats look a little bad here, but you hit Zone Up 3, you're looking at a really good time. But again, like I said, the goal is not 4 hearts, it's actually 6 heart. And once you have 6 heart, you're looking at a really good average, really good top 4 rate, really good win rate. Really, really great stuff. Finally, let's talk about Ashe reroll. Ashe reroll. Some people are still playing this comp with supers, and I swear to fucking God, if you're playing it with supers, you are so dumb. It's no flame. No flame, but you are misguided. You are misguided, my friend. Ashe reroll, you want to play around Renekton 3, Blitz 3, and Ashe 3. And similar theory with the Lulu board is ideally you have Ashe 3, Blitz 3 before you start leveling. If you miss out on a Renekton 3, it is what it is. Okay, but you need Blitz 3 and you need Ashe 3 because this is going to really help, streak you out throughout the mid game, and as soon as you hit the Ashe, they streak you out throughout, you know, most of stage 4 and partially even to stage 5. As you find these units and you start leveling, you need to play into brawlers. Play into brawlers. And as you tech in more brawlers, obviously the Warwick is your secondary carry. You want to itemize him second. So obviously, as the same as it always goes, Warwick, all his items are the same as they've always been. BT, stuff like Titan, stuff like Last Whisper. If you don't have a Last Whisper on your Warwick, you are trolling. Last Whisper on Warwick is incredibly important. It's incredibly important. Definitely something that you should not be sleeping on. But as you find more laser core units, ideally you can even just tech off of these two. Tech off the Jax, tech off the Lee Sin. You can play into a Mordekaiser if you get lucky, and just throw in a Fiddlesticks. There you go. This board is very, very strong. And laser focus, strong augment. Strong augment. And if you're uncontested, it's a really, 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 really secure and very easy top 4, assuming you manage to hit the Ashes. And again, strong board, really, really easy to play. Sorry, this is just the stats page because I was looking at the stats and researching for this video. But I hope this video was not too long. I know it might have taken a while to get through the meat and potatoes of the anima crest, but I hope this video was helpful, and I hope that if you are still like, I don't know if you're watching this video if you don't play TFT, but like if you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to play TFT, this is such a good patch to play TFT. There's so many unique lines, so many cool things to play, and like quite honestly, I've been having a lot of fun playing TFT. I haven't been able to play the past few days because I've been busy making videos and doing other things in real life, but I want to play as much as I can on this patch. This patch is so good, and please play on this patch. Yes, Kai'Sa's a bit strong. Winds of the Wanderer is still strong, but regardless, are they as impressive as like Hacker Gnar? Hacker LeBlanc, not even close. Not even close. So please, go play on this patch. It is such a beautiful patch. So many good things to say about it. But yeah, that's the video. I hope this meta analysis was helpful, and hopefully I will see you guys on the ladder. Take care, guys. Happy climbing.